every person. And I think that's why a lot of these comments mimic a lot of the Trump comments, at least for me. I mean, I literally have to go and look at people's timeline right now to see who they are, because the comments are the same.
And when the mainstream press, who, as we know, doesn't analyze anything below the surface, when they see this, they automatically equate Trump and Sanders, which is the very last thing people like Bernie Sanders want.
And it's completely unfair.
Oh, yeah.
Just because some of this is getting out of control doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders, that his longstanding record is any different. I think that his voting record, his long history of caring about civil rights, I think that these things matter. They can't be dismissed just because people don't like what's happening right now, and they really don't like that narrative that he's the same as Trump. I think he is, however, capable of riling people up to a same level of passion that Trump supporters have. That doesn't mean that the supporters are on the same level as the Trump supporters, and I don't want to imply that at all, because there are so many Bernie Sanders supporters who have excellent reasons for supporting him, and they don't deserve to be denigrated by this either. I just think that the Sanders campaign needs to regroup, and as you pointed out, he does have a lot of activists running things instead of Democrats from the party, and that was probably the Democrats' fault in part, because people don't want to, perhaps, I mean, I'm surmising here, I don't know this for a fact, but they don't want to quite help him and play ball because he wasn't a Democrat before. I mean, it's an awkward situation, but...
And, a lot of the top Democrats were already locked up with the Clinton campaign as far as employees and staff and everything. So he didn't have a lot to choose from. He didn't get the top-flight personnel.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he kind of had to take what he could get and what was out there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because he's running, and now he really was running a campaign, remember, that started at the very bottom.
Yeah.
So...
It is of the people. I mean, this is what he's done has been so tremendous, and that's why this bothers me. It is being destroyed by these teeny...
this little faction.
Yeah, this little faction, and these missteps that aren't then fully corrected.
Yeah.
And accountability is not being taken properly for this.
Yeah.
And I can understand how he probably feels, since it's not him saying this, and, he has this long record. I'm sure he feels like he's being really raked over the coals, whereas Hillary Clinton isn't, for the same sorts of things. But what I have written about before, and, the truth is, this is the fact, Hillary Clinton can say things without saying them because she's a good politician and a good diplomat, and that's part of the role. And whether that's fair or not isn't the issue. You can't say this stuff.
Yeah. That's the overriding message of this podcast. I think
you can't do it.
Say this stuff. This stuff has no place in the Democratic Party. We're not blaming Bernie Sanders, holding Bernie Sanders accountable. I know a lot of people on the extremes on both sides of the campaigns are like trying to blame the other, and it's ugly. But
I mean, that's what that's what I don't like. Those I'm hearing. First of all, yes, I see a lot of Clinton supporters trying to use this as the fatal blow for Bernie Sanders, and I don't think that's appropriate or fair. But when you're supporting a candidate, you're going to be passionate, and that's what people do, and that's their choice. The same thing with the Sanders supporters who are refusing to hear why this is a problem because they want to defend Sanders. The two are both equally wrong in that respect. This isn't even an issue about Bernie Sanders. The point is, this doesn't belong in the Democratic Party. The point is, this is wrong. The point is, maybe try to use this as a teaching moment. Look at how this hurts women politically and keeps them out of power. Can we talk about that? Isn't that the issue? When do women get this moment to have a discussion about how they've been kept out of power and how they are intimidated and abused to keep them out of power? That's really the underlying thing that's going on that no one wants to talk about. So instead we're going to have this fight over whether Bernie Sanders is a misogynist. No, he's not a misogynist. I don't think that's fair at all. I'd like to discuss why calling people whores is damaging to women. I mean, that's the only point that really matters at this juncture. And to say to all Democrats, this doesn't belong here, and you're better than this, you should be better than this, and if you're not, then there's no distinction between the Democrats and the Republicans. And here's an election that's being handed to Democrats, basically. And that's not to say that their candidates aren't so good they could beat a Republican, because any of them could. They're both really good candidates. They could beat any Republican that's been mentioned so far. And yet we're going to get distracted by get into the ditch and throw mud at people instead of talking about why not, this whole thing could be elevated. Bernie Sanders could actually give us a press conference about how damaging words like this are to women, and how he's sorry that he didn't hear this right away, but because he didn't hear the whole introduction or whatever happened. When you're going to speak, I'm sure you're nervous.
He's not sitting there on stage.
You're not listening to everything. I mean, I have given a lot of public speeches. I can totally understand that. But how about now come out and say that why this is wrong?
I think he's going to get that opportunity at the debate, and I think that letting it sit for almost a full day before the debate probably is a big mistake. This
is really disappointing for women. I mean, this is so damaging to women, and I have now spent I don't know how many hours being called all kinds of names because I think this is wrong, and that's really the point.
For having an opinion, you're being attacked for your gender.
Well, if I wasn't a woman, people wouldn't feel entitled to say a lot of this stuff to me, and they wouldn't be calling me a whore. They say that that's a word for, being paid off, and yet they use it in their defense. A lot of what they've been saying to me is, "Sorry, Sarah, it must be hitting a personal button with you," as in you're a whore and you just feel guilty about it. It's just so gross. But this is why please, people, let's not have this discussion.
In contrast, I've been manning the main PoliticusUSA account today, and not a single person has called me a whore.
Yeah.
If this is really about the corporate selling of politics and influence making you a whore, then I'm not a whore, but yet
I'm a
are
whore.
In the eyes of people.
I'm a whore because I dared to have an opinion. Isn't that ironic? And this is how they're defending corporate whore.
Yeah.
The irony is just too much for me.
They're actually reinforcing the cultural meaning of the term.
Oh, of course they are.
While defending...
Because they will not listen to why women have a problem with it. And if you won't listen to that, what does it say about you?
It says that you're closed-minded just like the far right, and you probably should take a step to the right.
And I'll be honest with you, and I try not to say stuff like this too often, but I'll just be frank here, because this really does bother me. A lot of the comments that I get are these men who think that they're intellectually superior to me, and so they can talk down to me. It's that whole mansplaining thing, but it's also like man-owning of the political sphere. So they're using all these very sort of condescending terms, and there's no way to completely expose the ridiculousness of that, because it's like you're the person who's acting like you're cheering on a football team instead of looking at serious issues and even being willing to hear a point of view that you don't agree with. And I'm getting all these, like, they accuse me of saying things that I've never said, and it's just ridiculous. It's like I've never said these things. I mean, I don't appreciate that kind of intellectual dishonesty. Nothing really irritates me more than people who have to make stuff up and move the goalpost because they can't make a point. Well, why don't you? Here's a clue. Why don't you be quiet and listen to the political minority voice that happens to be the majority of the Democratic Party? Just an idea. Just saying.
If you want to win the Democratic presidential nomination, it might be really good to get the majority of voters on your side.
Yeah.
Not just voters, the electorate, but majority of the rank and file Democrats. And this is so, to me, this feels very like it's alienating everybody that isn't male progressive.
Yeah. Well, there's a few women. I've had a few.
You're right, women.
A few sort of 20-year-olds, 21-year-old women tweeting me that feminism isn't necessary anymore, and we don't need women's rights. So that's been illuminating, to say the least, because I wasn't aware that, our rights, even though we don't have equal rights yet. I wasn't aware that rights were static, that you don't need to fight for them anymore, and that feminism should be killed because everything is cool now. But
just like the Supreme Court declared that racism was over, and we no
exactly.
longer need the Voting Rights Act.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. I mean, people don't. You say that. The only reason someone's saying that is to justify the position of the empowered. And ironically, they say they're supporting Bernie Sanders, who stands for the exact opposite of that. Bernie Sanders would never endorse that. He doesn't endorse the patriotic, excuse me, absolutely.
Faux patriotic, patriarchal.
Yeah, exactly. Patriarchal, dominant, corporate, because that's often the corporate position. He doesn't support any of those things, and I don't think you're ever going to hear him say we don't need feminism or the women's movement.
I think you're exactly right, and I think this is why we titled this "Real Democrats Don't Use the Word Whore."
Yeah.
Because this isn't an attack on Bernie Sanders. This isn't a partisan thing. This is a general message about the culture of the Democratic Party.
And it's how you discuss things. And a lot of people have been sending me sort of like their little photos and stuff they've shared on Facebook. Well, they are whores. They're corporate whores. Okay, I get it. I get why people want to use that term. It sucks that our Congress is so many of our representatives in Congress and our senators are shills. That's the word to use, though, is use the word shill. Don't use the word whore. Or they're bought and paid for and put their logo on them. Yes. Corporate owned. These are things they need to be talked about. They are legitimate. They are wrong. Don't denigrate women while you are doing it. It is not difficult.
True dat.
So with that, I will wrap this podcast up. Thank you so much for joining us.
We'll see you tonight after the Democratic debate.
Thank you for the tip. Didn't know you wanted to do that, so there you go. We will talk to you tonight after the Democratic debate. Thank you so much for tuning in.